If you're thinking about moving to Vancouver or Southwest Washington, it's going to be really smart for you to get your bearings before diving in. While our neighborhoods here look great on paper, not all of them are going to fit your specific lifestyle. And buying in the wrong spot can often lead to long commutes, surprise costs, or even feel like you need to move again. I'm Hayden Humphrey, and in this video, I'm going to break down the major parts of Southwest Washington based on real stories from buyers we've worked with and what they've experienced living here and working here.
Before we get into the neighborhoods and pricing, I want to zoom out and make sure you guys get a clear understanding of what Vancouver and Southwest Washington's actually like for a place to live. So right here, we're on Google Earth here. As you can see, this is Clark County, everything in the red here. So we have Southwest Washington, Vancouver right here. Going over east, we have Camas. We have Washougal right next to Camas. And through here, we have a few different freeways and highways that I wanted to go over. I'm going to show you guys. So let's begin by going over the freeways. Obviously, down in this section, this is all Portland, this whole area. Just circle this. This is all pretty much Portland, and then some suburbs. So we're right across the river. This river right here, this is known as the Columbia River. And so basically it heads east to west, and then it goes north to south. And so let's start. We're going to start with the freeways and the highways. So the two biggest ones are known as Interstate 5. Let's get that to here. So Interstate 5 is right here, and it goes all the way up. And then we have what's known as 205. And so right here, this is kind of the Salmon Creek area. It splits off. So you can either go I-5 or you can hit the 205, which takes you to more of the east side of Portland, while I-5 will take you to the west side. And I do want to point out here, a lot of people ask us, hey, where's PDX located at? So for me to get to PDX, I just take the 205 right here, and it's literally the first exit while crossing the bridge. Boom. PDX is right here. So super convenient, super close to Southwest Washington. And then there's two more highways that I want to show you guys. Highway 14, which is going to take you all the way over here to Camas and Washougal. And then there is what's known as 500. So Highway 14, down the way, there's some traffic lights and stuff. It's technically a highway, not a freeway. And then 500, I'm from Battleground, so I took 500 a lot. And it basically goes all the way down through here, cuts across, and then pops you out somewhere over here. So if we look at all these together, we have I-5, we have 205, we have 14, and we have 500. Those are pretty much the main routes. And 500 there's definitely some traffic lights. If you're looking for like a quicker commute, I usually take the 5 or 205. And I'll say this, from Vancouver to, let's say, Ridgefield on I-5, that's maybe a 15-minute drive on most days. And then just some landmarks so you guys are aware. So obviously Clark County's this area. We have number one, we have Mount St. Helens, which is right here. For most areas of Clark County, there's a good chance you can probably see like the tip of Mount St. Helens. We also have Mount Hood right here. Mount Hood is awesome. It's great for skiing, snowboarding, whatever you guys want to do. Mount Adams, not really a place where you go and you hang out. There's no lodges there. It's more so just for looks. I want to say it's an active volcano, I believe. And then Mount St. Helens obviously blew up a while ago, 40 plus years ago. And yeah, it's crazy that we live really close to it. I would definitely recommend traveling to the other side. So this side, from what we can see from Clark County, you don't see the side that actually blew out with this volcano. It's actually right here on this side. So I call it the dark side, but you basically travel over here. It's a really nice scenic drive, something to look at. That's really cool. So I get this question a lot. It's why people choose Southwest Washington. And the reason I think people choose Southwest Washington is, number one, there's a lot of steady growth. Throughout, I look at this map and I go, okay, Ridgefield's growing like crazy. Battleground, which is right here, growing like crazy. Rush Prairie is growing. Camas, Washougal, we have the waterfront down this area. Philida's growing. There's a ton of development. Through Mill Plain, there's a ton of development. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So there's steady growth. The job market here, I'd say, is relatively strong. And overall, it's a well-planned development and a community. Now, throughout this area, there's tons of outdoor access. You got waterfront trails. You got public parks. Obviously, you can see from this area, there's a lot of green. There's a lot of stuff to do outdoors. And another thing too is, the economy here, it's definitely growing. There's a ton of new restaurants, new shops, and new community hubs. And I would say Southwest Washington is best for people that have families looking for like quality schools at an affordable space. Professionals, professional standpoint, who want like a stable, well-connected place to live. And then honestly, we got a ton of people that are retiring here. They're just looking for, something peaceful, it's accessible, and a place where they can have that community connection with others. So talking about just the lifestyle here, I would say Vancouver offers more of a suburban type of lifestyle. And there's pockets of, places you can walk to, but most areas are definitely going to require a car. It's not like New York City where you can hop on the bus anywhere and, or get a taxi or whatnot. Definitely will need a car. I'm here in Vancouver. I'm going to scroll in. This is the Vancouver waterfront area right here. As you can see, it's right off of I-5. So this whole area right here in the recent years has been developed, and there's still a lot more going on. They have basically like this boardwalk here, a ton of restaurants, some winery type style places. Definitely bougie. And I will say that here in Vancouver and Southwest Washington in general, the nightlife is pretty limited. I'm outside of the waterfront and parts of downtown. The city quiets down relatively early. Neighborhoods I would say they vary a lot in just the feel. Some are really family heavy and quiet, and then some are more of the transitional or mixed, I'd say. And in the last video I made a statement saying like the social life here, if you move here, you don't know anybody, it's not going to feel like instant. You're not going to meet people. You'd have to have some effort there if you want to, build connections, build relationships and friendships. And if you end up landing in a neighborhood that doesn't really match your style, match your pace, it can definitely feel off for you. And something else I wanted to mention, we get questions all the time about just the weather here in general. I would definitely, if you move here, you're going to find out really quick. I would expect those long stretches of the gray skies, the overcast. Typically between October and May, that's when kind of the bad weather starts to come in. Some people enjoy it. I'm not a huge fan of it. And that being said, there's still days in January, there's still days in February, whenever, December, where it's clear skies and it's sunny. But I would say most of the time during that period, expect rain, expect kind of the cloudy skies. And with that being said, just simple things as a homeowner, simple things like yard maintenance. Here's a story for you. I used to live in California and I realized how dry everything was. And I know in different areas, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, you don't really have to worry about like the wet yard maintenance that comes in with that. Things like moss and pine needles and mud and, let's say fast growing plants that you really need to keep up with. Those things are here, and you're going to have to deal with those things if you own a home. Another thing, too, is just allergies. I know there's different allergies in different spots of the U.S. Here in Southwest Washington, I'd say the spring definitely hits. I personally had allergies. It's not a huge deal. It's either either take the Zyrtec or the Claritin. But something to note, obviously we have a ton of greenery here. There's a lot of trees, there's a lot of grass, and then the mold spores can come in, and that can be the culprit of some of the allergies. And more to say with weather is it's not super likely that we have a ton of wildfires here, but here in the recent years, they're definitely there. I would say about 1 week out of the year, we do expect some smoke, and that's usually like late summer, August. Something to note, it's not a huge deal, but let's say if you had like asthma or something, or your kids that had trouble breathing, something to note. Now, the reality of the cost of living here. Here's the reality. Here's the truth. Vancouver and Southwest Washington, it's definitely not as pricey as like Seattle and certain areas of Portland, but it's no longer a hidden gem, and home prices here in the recent years have risen significantly. That's just the truth. Sometimes the property taxes can surprise buyers, especially in like the new developments with bonds or levies. And then little things like the HOA dues. If you have high HOA dues, higher utility costs and insurance, things like that, they can definitely stretch your monthly budget quite a bit. And one thing that's cool about here is there is no state income tax, but the sales tax here is high, and some everyday goods, they might feel more expensive than you initially expected. And people ask about commuting a lot. And something I always like to say is the two spaces that typically get backed up with traffic are these two spots. So we have I-5 right here. This is I-5. We have 205 right here. So with these two spots before the bridge on either side, we'll sometimes get backed up. What I have learned though is coming up through I-5 and 205 for the most part, all the way up through here, it's very rare to have traffic unless obviously there's an emergency, there's a big crash that occasionally happens. I will say over here in the 205 area, right through here, rush hour is a little bit more heavy over in this area. And this goes to 205 and then 14 over at Camas. I have seen it backed up a little bit. You know, it's not crazy. It's not like the Los Angeles traffic or anything like that, but something to definitely note for sure. And something I like to tell buyers is before you buy a house, figure out your route to figure out your commute, figure out your route to work. There's a good chance you might be working here in Portland, and whether, you know, the 14, 205, I-5, or 500 is what you're going to take, you should definitely test those out just on a Monday or Tuesday morning. I mean, sometimes I'll send my buyers out to the house they're about to purchase and say, hey, let's try this commute out, make sure it works for you. I will say, you know, places like Battleground, while it might seem not too far, I actually grew up in Battleground, so I can definitely resonate with this. But you think about it, and let's say you're over here in Battleground, to get onto I-5, this is going to be a 10 to 15 minute, and then from here, it's going to be another 15 minutes. And let's say you're working down in Portland, it's going to take a while. It's definitely going to take a while, and sometimes that commute can be really frustrating. And then overall culture here in Southwest Washington, I would say culture in the pace here has a mix of suburban routines and then the light urban flavor, but overall it's like a slower paced city than most of the big cities that you know. There's definitely a growing restaurant and brewery scene here, but overall I'd say it's still developing compared to major metros like Portland. You go down to Portland, you realize how much more food there is. I get this question occasionally. People ask about, political views, and I stay very neutral with everything. Political views here are definitely mixed. There's, I would say, some leaning on both sides. Moderate with pockets of both, progressive folks or conservative communities. And then overall, I think that Southwest Washington, Vancouver, it may feel quieter than you're used to if you're coming from a big city, but I would say it's a little bit more practical. So the first community we're going to start out with is Camas, Washington. It's a beautiful area, beautiful community, and I'm going to show you on a map here. So Camas is everything here in the red, and like I said before, it's from I-5 from downtown Vancouver. All you do is you take 14 over here to Camas, and it buds up to another growing city known as Washougal. And it's pronounced Camas. A lot of people will go Camas. No, it's definitely Camas. Overall, Camas is it's a quiet, it's definitely upscale, and it's highly residential with probably some of the best schools in the area. And overall, there's a lot of natural beauty, and I'll show you here real quick. We have Camas Lake, which is very nice. So here's Camas Lake. As you can see, it's beautiful, ton of green, and then also all the development that is going on here. And I'm just going over here, over to the Columbia, scrolling through here. So the right buyer for Camas, I'd say Camas is for someone who want elite schools. They want neighborhoods that are planned out really well and overall long-term equity growth. Now you have the top-rated schools. You have, Camas Lake trails. You have all the parks. There's really low crime in Camas and ton of Camas pride. For example, if you go to one of the Camas football games, you will definitely see that. Some of those games are crazy, and Camas football is obviously crushing it. And overall here in Camas, there's a strong resale demand. The cons of this are the home prices. So here in Camas, the home price, I want to say it's $797 for the average price sold in 2025 year. And I'm going to go ahead and write that down. And I have a whole map printed out here. And I went ahead and threw in Camas here, $797. We're going to go through a couple different communities here just to show you all the price differences within the area. So I'm just here on Google Earth showing you what downtown Camas kind of looks like. So the cons of Camas is obviously the prices are much higher. There's limited dining and nightlife it's definitely a quiet town, especially after hours. It's not a big city. It's a suburb. And I would say another con that I get from some people is that it's kind of a drive over. It's about a 15-minute drive over to downtown Vancouver. Some people don't mind it, and some people do. The types of homes that are sold here are definitely like the larger single-family homes, a lot of custom builds, anywhere from $750 to $3 million. Definitely some luxury, some bougie houses here. So I find that a lot of buyers that see Camas realize that Camas checks way too many boxes for them to not even consider the area. We've had buyers in the past that have given up, I would say, different like luxuries, so to say, and I say luxuries as a loose term, just to be in the Camas school district and just to be in the area. Maybe it's an easier commute than, let's say, Battleground or Ridgefield if you're commuting over to Portland. And for example, I had buyers that were at 650 and they went over to Battleground and looked at 650 houses, and then went over to Camas, and there was definitely like a noticeable difference. And obviously scrolling on, Zillow and different third-party companies, you can definitely see the differences in just the type of house and type of property you get. However, if you're doing this and you're scrolling on Zillow, I would definitely recommend that you see the areas in person. I can't tell you how many buyers I've worked with who reach out to me and they go, nope, I'm focused on one specific town. It's either Camas or it's Vancouver. That's where I want to live. And then they go and they tour in person and they go, this isn't it. This isn't what I really expected. And so with that being said, if you are interested in learning more about the different areas here in Southwest Washington and the price points, go ahead and shoot me a text. Okay, so from Camas, we are going to head north to a great community known as Ridgefield. Ridgefield has been booming these last couple years. I'm personally looking for a place here. This is Ridgefield. So just the lay of the land here. Ridgefield is this area, and it buds up to Battleground. Battleground's kind of this area. And keep in mind, these are all approximate. And then you have this little town known as La Center right here. And so Ridgefield basically buds up to La Center, Battleground, and then Salmon Creek and Philida right through here. Heading north, so obviously from this map, you can see here that Vancouver is right down here. Basically head up I-5 and then you'll hit Ridgefield. It's one of the fastest growing upscale areas of Clark County, but it still has that small town, the peaceful vibe, and it's definitely under the radar. It's clean. There's a lot of newer neighborhoods, I'd say, and you still have that small town core. Schools are amazing, and you kind of get that growing, like the wine country feel, aka like kind of the rolling hills type. So who is Ridgefield for? Some of the pros of Ridgefield is there's obviously gorgeous views and a lot of open space. There's a ton of new construction, new homes. There's definitely wider roads, weird thing to say, but the city definitely takes care of everything there is to do with Ridgefield. Little things like the park and the dog park and the swing sets and the roads. The roads are clean and all the landscaping's clean. And something that I wanted to show you here. So you have Ridgefield down in this area from I-5 here, and people like Ridgefield for this one reason. The furthest you can get from I-5 is roughly 8 to 9 minutes, because obviously we get backed up here to the Columbia River. And so unlike, a place like Battleground where you can go 30 minutes east, you can get really far out there. Ridgefield is definitely an easier type of commute. And I would say a school district wise, Ridgefield, I think, is right behind Camas. People move to Ridgefield for the school district. And something else with Ridgefield is the average home price, according to Google, is $643,000. So it's probably the most second behind Camas, I would say. Obviously, there's a lot of subjectiveness with pricing, because throughout this whole entire area, there are really nice homes. There's different neighborhoods that are nice, but this is like more of a general feel. So over here in Camas, you have $797,000 for an average sold price, and then over here in Ridgefield, you have $643,000 for an average sold price. A lot of people know about the In-N-Out. It's the first one in Washington, and they're actually putting it right here. Obviously, this is a little bit older, but this is a Costco right here that just got finished this last year, and they're putting an In-N-Out and a couple other awesome restaurants. And if In-N-Out is putting a restaurant there, they know something good is happening with the area. Another cool spot about Ridgefield is you have what's called the Ridgefield National Wildlife Refuge. And you can actually do this drive, and I occasionally do this with my daughter. We go and we look at some animals, but you can make this drive all around this whole area, look at some birds and coyotes and deer and all sorts of critters, turtles even, which is pretty nice. And this is right in our backyard. I would say, generally speaking, the cons of living here in Ridgefield is, I would say there's more of a longer commute compared to, if you're in Vancouver, obviously, or if you're in Camas. The commute's not super bad, but some people think, it's just a little too far. As the crow flies, it's pretty far up. And then another con too is, it's still a small town. There's limited dining. There's limited grocery store options. They do have a grocery store over here known as Rose Hours. And I actually heard that they're putting another one in. I'm not sure if it was a Safeway, Albertsons, or Fred Meyer, or whatever it is, but there's a lot of stuff in the works. The home types in Ridgefield, I'd say, are mostly newer single-family homes. You find that there's a lot of newer developments being built and that have been built recently here in the last few years. And then custom builds. So anywhere from 600 to 1.2. And so obviously there's some beautiful estates in Ridgefield that are $3, $4, even $5, $6 million. Beautiful, beautiful homes. But generally speaking, you're anywhere from, if you're in the neighborhoods, probably $600,000 to $1.2 million. So I think we have kind of a theme. The two big areas right now are Camas and Ridgefield. Both have a ton of growth. Both have really good schools. And both are relatively quiet. They're quiet towns. Past 6, 7 o'clock, there's not a lot of nightlife going on, and I think people appreciate that. Now, if you are looking for something that feels close to everything, but still has that, tucked away, high-end suburban feel, Philida should be on your radar. So Philida is just south here in Ridgefield, actually buds up to Ridgefield right through this area here. So this is Philida, actually more so this area right here. And here in Philida, let's go to our pricing map. Our average sold price, according to data pulled from the MLS in 2025, is $735. Now the vibe here in Philida, it's definitely an established area. I'd say it's definitely upscale, more of like an upscale suburb. There's a lot of mature trees, a lot of parks. As you can see here, we have the Philida Community Park, which is right over here. We have the Foley Neighborhood Park, and we also have a few others right here. So Philida is for the buyer who wants it, a done right type of neighborhood, not just flashy, but something has been proven that it's a good area, it's a good place to live. The pros of Philida is there's excellent school reputation. You have Skyview High School, which is a great high school. You have Columbia River High School, which is also up there. Another pro is there's waterfront trail access nearby, and overall, it's a quiet, safe, and visually appealing place to live. And what's great is if you just look here from an aerial view, you are really close to a lot of shopping. I mean, obviously, Hazeldale is a great shopping hub. Different spots in Salmon Creek has pretty much everything you need, from groceries to dry cleaning to restaurants, and Philida is just off the beaten path just a little bit over in this area. Two other cons, like I said, it is an established neighborhood, and so with that being said, there's limited new construction. There's not a lot of new homes that come up, and generally speaking, there's not a lot of homes for sale. If you look from like a broad picture from all of Clark County, Philida, if there's a listing that goes live in Philida, there's something for sale, it usually gets bid up because so many people want to live there. So overall, the type of house in Philida, generally speaking, is like a well-maintained single-family home. There's a lot of 1990s, early 2000 builds, and there's a custom estates, anywhere from 700 to 1.3. But like I said before, there's houses that are 2.5, 3 million in Philida. And a little bit of a story time here. I personally, right now, I have 3 buyers that told me, they called me, they're relocating here. They said, Philida is the only place that I want to live. I said, how about Camas? How about Ridgefield? They said, nope. I've heard from locals around the area, Philida is the place to live. That's where I want to buy a house. All right, another awesome community is actually my hometown. So I might be a little biased, a little subjective. It's Battleground, Washington. And so if we go up this area here, obviously we have downtown Vancouver right through here. And Battleground is up by 5. And then over this is Battleground. Battleground actually spreads out quite a bit to this. And from downtown Vancouver, you can actually take 500, like I said earlier, all the way up. And it leads up past Battleground up to Amboys. All right, so if we go back to our pricing map, the average sold price in Battleground is $575,000. I'm going to stick that right there. And obviously compared to, Camas over here, Philida and Ridgefield, it's definitely more of an affordable option. Looking for more space, affordability, and that mix of suburban meets rural living, Battleground has been a go-to for years. And I might be a little biased because I did grow up there. I went K through 12 and graduated from Battleground High School. And when I describe Battleground to people, because I grew up there, I call it like a self-sufficient town. It has everything that you need. It has every grocery store. It has all the restaurants. Just a good place to grow up. That's a little bit more affordable than some of these other areas. But, it has everything that you need. So the family that usually goes out to Battleground buys realizes it's much more affordable, so you can get a lot more house than compared to other areas. The pros of Battleground, I'd say, there's obviously a lower price per square foot. There's a ton of new construction. Like I said, all these areas have a lot of builders coming in. The schools, I'm not going to say they're the best, but they are good. There's a lot of local shopping. There's a couple different breweries, and then absolutely a ton of parks and different areas. For example, I'm going to just type in Lucia Falls here, and it's going to take us over Lucia Falls here. Whoa. And so when I think about Battleground, this is kind of what I grew up with. This is Lucia Falls. I used to actually go swimming here growing up. As you can see, total Pacific Northwest vibes here. A lot of trees, a lot of fun things to do with the family. Now for the cons. There's a couple cons with Battleground. The biggest one that I have is just the commute time. I grew up East Battleground, so about 25 minutes from I-5. And so basically, anytime you needed to go to Vancouver, it's like a 40-plus minute drive. And sometimes out in Battleground, that's kind of what you need to expect. I would say some areas of Battleground aren't the most well-kept. There's some rural areas that are, I would say, maybe a little bit underdeveloped for the most part. And the types of homes that are in Battleground usually, there's plenty of older homes that were built in the 80s, 90s. There's a lot of new subdivisions, and there's plenty of homes on land. Surrounding Battleground, there's a lot of acreage properties. I'll scroll out here. As you can see, there's a lot of fields, a lot of properties that have some land. And generally speaking, I would say the average prices here, just an average type of house. Obviously, it's $575, but you can find a house of anywhere from $450 to $850. And so Battleground, Washington is a great place for families who want more affordability without sacrificing that quality of life, and maybe even room for, a garden or shop or a bigger size lot. Now, if you're dreaming of acreage, privacy, and something that feels Pacific Northwest peaceful, Brush Prairie might be your match. And so from the bird's eye view, Brush Prairie actually buds up to Battleground. So as you can see, Battleground's right through here, and Brush Prairie is basically everything in the red. So the vibe of Brush Prairie, it's definitely different than a lot of other areas. It's semi-rural and definitely wooded. There's a lot of luxury homes on land here and plenty of different custom builds. If you're driving down the road in Brush Prairie, there's a good chance you're going to see a beautiful house, beautiful property. And so the type of buyer that's going to be wanting Brush Prairie is a buyer who wants land, they want privacy, maybe they want a high-end home in a natural setting. And when I think of Brush Prairie, I think of like big fields or farmland. Now, as you can see, there's a ton of fields, right? It's not super developed yet. People are selling a lot of land here. Big fields, big acreage properties. And some of the pros of Brush Prairie is definitely like there's a stunning estate style type of homes, type of properties. The roads are relatively quiet. There's a lot of mature trees, and there's some views that you can find. And something I do like about Brush Prairie too is compared to somewhere like Battleground, it might feel remote, but generally speaking, it's pretty close to quite a bit. As you can see, I'm just scrolling through here. Maybe 8 to 10 minutes to shopping, to restaurants, to Vancouver here. I think a con that I get occasionally with buyers is it's expensive. There's definitely higher price points for the land. Now, the types of homes here are the custom estates on acreage and plenty of equestrian properties. So generally speaking, anywhere from 750,000 to 2 million plus. And I think, Brush Prairie is great for a buyer chasing like a forever home, a place that they want to retire, a place that they have space to breathe without moving in the middle of nowhere. And looking at our pricing map, the average price home as of 2025 is $825,000. And now you can find a cheaper homes here, but generally speaking, like I said before, there's a lot of really high-end, 10 plus acre estates that probably bring this value up quite a bit. But yeah, so as you can see, if we're looking at this from like a broader scope, Camas down here, 797,000, Florida, in the 700s. Ridgefield and Battleground are surprisingly a little bit less than some of these other areas. Now, if you're looking for a well-connected area with everything nearby, the stores, the schools, the trails, Fisher's Landing is one of the most convenient spots in Vancouver. Now, generally speaking, different spots in Vancouver are really different in price. I like to tell people it's definitely like neighborhood by neighborhood. You could find a neighborhood with houses in 900 to $1 million, and then you can find a neighborhood with houses, 450 to 550, really close to each other. Fisher's Landing, according to the stats, is 550K. I would say more so closer to the 600 mark, just based off of what I've seen. And yeah, so it's definitely more of the smaller type homes, more affordable compared to places like Camas and Florida. So this is what's known as Fisher's Landing East. Fisher's Landing, though, is generally this whole area. Let me get my drawing tool. So Fisher's Landing is basically right through here. It's East Vancouver. That does butt up to Camas. The vibe here is definitely a suburban, but I would say more of a practical type feel. A lot of well-kept neighborhoods and pretty much easy access to just about everything. So Fisher's Landing, this area, the people that like Fisher's Landing are usually more of the busy type of professionals, families, and I would say downsizers who want more of like the low maintenance type of living. And then someone who wants that convenience in location. So the pros of living in Fisher's Landing, and it's really close to some of the big box stores. Like I believe there's a Target there, and there's a Walmart and places like that. A lot of restaurants that are close, and the schools are really close. It's definitely a walkable area too. There's a lot of well-maintained neighborhoods, and it's a reasonable commute to jobs and a super easy commute over to the airport, as you can see here. So if you live in Fisher's Landing and you had to commute to PDX, all you would do is literally hop on 14 to 205 down here, and boom, you'd be at the airport. Some of the cons is there's definitely some smaller lots, but with that comes affordability. And in some areas, it can definitely feel busy. You're not out in Battleground on a bigger lot with some breathing room. It's definitely more of like the tight pocket, low maintenance style living. And the average home type, there's a lot of different types of homes. In Fisher's Landing, though, definitely townhomes are a big thing. There's a lot of one-level ranch homes and mid-sized single-family homes. And I'd say you could find a house anywhere from $450 to $850. Obviously, it's neighborhood by neighborhood, and you can find a nicer neighborhood that could probably cost a lot more, or something definitely more affordable. So Fisher's Landing definitely is for a buyer who definitely values convenience and lifestyle over that flashy type of big house. It has everything you need and nothing that you don't need. And so before we finish this video, I wanted to pull up this map one more time. As you guys can see, these are some different price points here. This is all very subjective though. Pretty much in any of these areas, you can find houses, in the 500s for the most part. With that being said though, Battleground and Ridgefield are a little bit more affordable, as well as different spots of Vancouver. Fisher's Landing right here, the 550K. It's definitely east side. It's definitely a nicer area of Vancouver, but even throughout downtown, you can find houses, in the 500s. Now, I just gave you guys a ton of information. If you're feeling overwhelmed trying to figure it all out, or worried about landing somewhere that just doesn't feel quite right, you're definitely not the only one. I'm going to tell you that. And that's exactly why having someone local that can save you so much time, stress, and money is really important. So just reach out. Call or text the number on the screen. We'd love to help you figure out where you truly belong. And if you're still wondering whether Southwest Washington, Vancouver, or Camas
is even the right move at all, check out this next video right here.